Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Citizens of the world, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 13th. And once again, thank you, Sly Stone, for that little bit of music we just heard. Next up is another longtime guest and a good friend, Kelly Cassidy. She is the state representative for the very proud 14th District of the state of Illinois. And she's just back from the legislative session, and I thought I ought to grab her and hear a little bit about what on. And that's before all this stuff started breaking loose in the streets. But we probably knew it was coming, and it all flows together. So good day to you, Kelly Cassidy. I'm so glad you're joining me. And how about telling us about Springfield, Illinois, and what's been going on down there?
It was a session, man. We are home. We did pass a balanced budget. It was a mix of cuts and corporate loophole closures and some fees that people don't love too much, but we got to pay for the things. And an expectation that we're probably going to have to go back at some point after the federal cuts become clear. But there's a lot we did get done and a lot we didn't get done. On my bills front, a project that I've been working on for a few years finally has come to fruition, and that is the rewrite of the Sexual Assault Services and Emergency Treatment Act that dictates what happens when a survivor appears at an emergency room and the procedures for collecting evidence and how they're to be treated and billing and all sorts of deeply boring things. But ultimately, what I was able to do through these last few years of working with a lot of different stakeholders is flip the lens of that law and put everything through a survivor lens. So, lots of things that were, sort of in place because it was easier for the hospital to do have been changed to make it more about that survivor's experience and how they're handled. So I'm very proud of that. And that's going to the governor's desk. Things we didn't do, we didn't handle the transit cliff. We didn't pass any ethics reform. Some very disappointing things. On the transit cliff side of things, I'm getting a lot of constituents concerned about potential service cuts. And they're right to be concerned. But, we have been working for the last, I think the speaker appointed the working group last year. And they've been meeting regularly and updating our caucus. And really until probably the last three to 5 days of session, the messaging from that working group was we're working on governance and reforms first, and we'll deal with funding later because reforms are a legislative calendar issue and the funding is a calendar year issue. And we know we'll have time to deal with it. That was the message up until that last week. And then suddenly it was urgent that we figure out funding. This is one of those pieces where, everybody's got an idea for how to pay for it that doesn't touch them.
Let me ask a little bit more about the transit stuff.
Yeah.
I was at Mariano's this week down on Foster and Sheridan, and there was a guy with a CTA uniform on outside, and I said, "Hey, brother, how's it going? Long live the CTA, blah, blah, blah." And then we got into a discussion, and he said there are already lots of cuts going on. So I'm not sure what the dynamics are. You passed this transit bill, does that affect not only CTA, but the Metras and...
It's all of it. Yeah. So we've got, CTA, Metra, PACE buses, plus the transportation for people with disabilities. They're all together, but not. There's multiple service boards managing all of them. There's lots of duplication, and they're all struggling for different reasons. And so trying to get those pieces sorted out while also figuring out what of these funding issues are governance based and what of the funding issues are, revenue shortfalls, because there's both, right? And I know that, the folks that are appointed to this working group are pretty amazing. They're absolute transit nerds, to be perfectly honest with you. They're the best possible people to be dealing with this. The working group is led by Representative Evedina Delgado, who used to be the intergovernmental affairs person for CTA, knows the inner workings of all of these entities. And it's no secret to any of us that, our our transit systems have been struggling for years. They're inadequate. We can and should do better. And it does need to start with governance. I wish that we had not had that sort of flip the script and, try to force funding in 3 or 4 days problem. Because, the things we were looking at, a lot of us were pushing back on one of the biggest segments of funding was to come from delivery fees. So there's a great argument to be made that, this is a transit-oriented funding issue, that, additional delivery vehicles on the roads cause more wear and tear. People could take use transit to get there. But there's also the very real issue of this being a more regressive tax. The people that can least afford to pay it will. So some of us in the Progressive Caucus were trying to push back on that a little bit, try to get maybe a threshold in place so that we could exclude orders of under $50 or something, so that it could hit people less hard. But there just wasn't time to discuss these things. There were other entities pushing for funding solutions that were never, ever going to get off the ground. The bulk of the labor coalition wanted to add a sales tax on services. Well, I mean, that's kind of been the penny that keeps coming back around. Every time we have a funding problem, somebody brings up a tax on services. And before you know it, we have to exclude everything that has a lobbyist. So legal fees can't be the services that you pay taxes on, and financial services can't be charged taxes, and fur storage or whatever. And we end up back down to, hairdressers and cosmetologists and, again, regressive funding bases. So, we've got to spend the time to get this right.
Would you predict if there's another session that you'll get it through? And who is the opposition? Is it the Republicans? Is it a chunk of Democrats?
It was everything, right? Every possible funding strongly unified lobby against it, right? One of the first pack-based surcharge. Well, that got the entire Collier County governments united for the first time in a million years against that, saying, they're taking our money to build the CTA. None of this is true. The downstate entities were pushing back on the delivery tax because it's, your pizza's paying for the CTA rat hole, an enemy.
Yeah. Well, let's switch over to the ethics legislation that was supposed to happen or you wanted to happen. Where is that at and what it's all about?
Last thing that happened, it looked like there wasn't going to be one. There's a practice in Springfield of ethics and election reform bills being put through an omnibus or agreed bill. Chambers and the governor agree on what's going in there in advance, and a lot of things get glommed together. We don't take individual votes on individual ideas. And, that's good sometimes. That's helpful sometimes. But in this instance, we were getting down to the wire, and there was no word of an omnibus. And then our Ethics and Elections Committee chair got notification that the Senate had an amendment ready, and this is what they wanted to do. And we convened because there were 2 items that had never been discussed that were being presented as going into it from the Senate's perspective. And one was a change to the election calendar and what it means to blow the caps. And it's complicated, but it all boils down to Senate President Don Harmon operated in what he thought was good faith and the right way to handle blown caps. And the law and the Board of Elections is fining him. And I thought it was originally like $4 million. Today, there's a headline that it's $9 million. And he wanted to make a retroactive change to the law to get out from under that. And then the other one was an exemption to the prohibitions on holding fundraisers during session days for people who are running for federal office. There are several members of the Senate running for Congress. The lieutenant governor is running for the Senate. It's a deeply bad look.
Well, okay on that. Where are things at? We're in a dire situation here in the United States, and I'm wondering, as someone who has been in the forefront of equality in marriage and people's rights, no matter what their gender, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you see things at, and what are the challenges? I mean, I know that there are segments of the old GOP, the grand old party, the Republicans, who are really going to go after same-sex marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue. And my son is married to a guy, and my daughter's married to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So real close to home stuff.
Yeah.
You as a leader in the forefront of all that, how about giving us your take on what you think is going on and what we need to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, things are probably more fraught than they've ever been in my lifetime. And I lived through the AIDS crisis. Point to that and many other points in our history to remind younger folks who might be feeling the weight of this. They've been trying to erase us since the beginning of time, and we always come out on top. And that's what I have to continue to hang on to. But ultimately, here in Illinois, we have put protections into place to ensure that we are as reinforced as we can be in the protections that we have on the books in Illinois. Access to marriage equality as an Illinois law. So unless there is a federal ban, even if they overturn the federal right to marriage, our marriages are fine. Our ability to marry will be fine. The same is true of abortion and access to gender affirming care and the ability to do so without fear of criminalization. Those laws are as strong as any in the nation. We are safer here than anywhere else. And we have to be prepared to fight back. We have to be pushing back on these harmful narratives. I spent the last 2 weeks of session facing daily censure motions from the Republicans who every day get up and rant about trans kids. And I finally got sick of it and started pushing back and talking about the harmful impact of what they're doing. They are obsessed with children's genitals. They use this moment every day to bully children, suicidal ideation possible. They have blood on their hands. And I've shared that publicly on the House floor multiple times. The very last action we took before we gavelled out for the spring was to finally allow a vote on one of their motions to censure me. And most of my Democratic colleagues stood with me and voted against their motion. And it was soundly defeated. But at the end of the day, they don't want to be held responsible for their actions. They think that they can erase some words from the record and undo the harm they've done. And that's simply untrue. And I will not stop calling them out for it.
Kelly Cassidy, are there any Republican members of the state legislature that you know of who have gay kids or trans kids? Because it seems to me that there's plenty of right-wing gay people out there.
Yeah. None that I am aware of, but it is statistically impossible that there aren't some.
Can you tell me, were there some Democrats who did not support you?
There were some Democrats who sat on the floor and didn't vote.
Oh, I hope there's some kind of retribution for all of that sooner or later.
Well, we're going to start with some. We're going to start with some with some discussion of the issue. Absolutely. I will say I do appreciate when people show you who they are.
No, that's good. Has the challenge to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was really a hallmark and I thought a step forward in our government and the way the country was going until the debacle that we're now enduring. How is that challenge that the president put out to get rid of all DEI, how is that affecting us in Illinois, and does it?
Well, again, in some ways it doesn't. Because we are, they love to say states' rights, until they don't. But here's a fun one. The House Republican leader, the minority leader, introduced a bill to create a scholarship fund for STEM studies for women and girls. And she got called out for it because it stands in direct opposition to the president's directives on DEI. And so she amended her bill to make it available to anyone. She was for DEI until she was told not to be.
Oh, well, and our governor is speaking out a little bit on things these days. I mean, I see him Facebook. I see him on Instagram. I see him on the TV. I was going to talk to you about how about we get him on the show here. And I'm going to share this. The one time I did have any contact with the governor was when he was running for Congress opposing our good friend Jan Schakowsky.
Yeah.
And he came to the Heartland Cafe. And I said, well, you're welcome here, but we're for Jan. I was not really that friendly. So I'd like to make it up to him someday. And I'm looking for help on that. But
Okay.
how do you think he's doing, and what do you think his plans are?
I think he has been a more amazing partner than I could have expected. And honestly, I am so grateful that he is in the role he's in, and I hope that he stays in it. Whether he runs for president or not, I really hope he runs for re-election. I don't know the answer. But he is exactly who we need right now. So that's me manifesting that out to the universe.
Yeah, no, he has been amazing.
Yeah. And then, on Thursday, there will be these congressional hearings and I know that this airs a different day, but, we're looking forward to seeing what happens with him and Hochul and Walz when they get called before Congress to discuss sanctuary policies this week.
You in our back and forth on our text, you said you talked about the sliding tile puzzle of the political landscape.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
Well, with all of the things that are opening up, so we've got Lieutenant Governor Stratton stepping out of the LG role to run for the Senate. You've got Raja Krishnamurthy stepping out of Congress to run for the Senate. You've got, you've got Schakowsky's retirement. You've got the rumored retirement of Danny Davis. Robin Kelly running for U.S. Senate has folks running for her seat. And, those then just keep stacking down. It's, then who's going to run for the seat that Laura Fine is holding while she runs for Congress? Who's going to run for so like Robert Peters is in a midterm, so he doesn't have to give up his seat. But then there are House members that are maybe looking at seats as well. So all of those shifts are going to have a pretty seismic impact on our political landscape as people move up and over and around.
Yeah, well, I'd like to go into that even more. It's just, the one that I'm not too worried about who's going to run for the Senate. I mean, it seems like the governor got right behind Stratton right away. Yeah. And I did like Laura Underwood, and I thought they kind of undercut her a little bit too quickly. And but I think she's formidable and will stick around.
I was worried about losing that seat, honestly. Like, I don't know what their motivation. I don't know what their motivation was, but I like, it just kind of made me cringe a little bit. It made me nervous.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, she's been great.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Become a maroon district, I guess, even now. Yeah. Blue district. Let me, what you got any more on the Jan Schakowsky seat, which, we got Daniel Biss is jumping in on it.
Yeah.
We've got that influencer woman, I don't know what her name is, if she's still running.
The Edgewater Library protest this week, apparently. I wasn't there. I didn't see her, but.
You got a favorite in any of these races?
I am all.
You're too political and suave to tell us what you think.
I am all in with this. I was at his launch yesterday. He first of all, he and I have just been partners in so much work together that that he's practically family. But this was an unconventional launch. This was not a big campaign rally like you often see for a launch. This was a pretty intimate gathering of parents of trans kids. And, sharing the importance of having someone who so intimately understands what this community is up against, being in this seat means and feels like to us.
Well, Daniel Biss has been a guest on this show a number of times in different capacities. And he did take a little heat from some progressives over his handling of the new Dyke Stadium building.
Yeah.
But, that goes on, that kind of stuff. We'll see. We'll ask Dan to come on the show again, and that'll be good. I'm not sure how many minutes we have left, but you got any encouragement, any predictions, any challenges, any pathways to a better world that you want to share?
I want to make sure that folks are really leaning into looking out for each other, in particular as we head to protests, this weekend and beyond. What we've seen in Los Angeles makes very, very clear what they want is for us to react with violence. We cannot give them what they want. Being mindful of protecting folks who might not be as experienced at protests and making sure that you're helping get them out of danger if you need to. We got to be on swivel. We are all make sure that we're taking care of each other.
And Kelly Cassidy, what are you doing for fun these days?
I'm leaning very much into trying to produce as much food as I can this year in my garden. I've been sort of amping it up every year, and this year we've expanded even more. And so I'm every morning I sort of run out excitedly to see what's sprouting and what's growing. And there's just a really wholesome, good feeling that comes from that every day, that like I can focus on the fact that I have 5 pumpkin plants growing, and that my sugar snap peas just seem like the happiest little tendril beasts ever. That's what I'm looking at.
You're turning out a lot of food on your back 40.
Exactly. My back 40, which is a driveway and a tiny garden patch.
Yeah, it's tiny. I got a lot of room out back, but I got so many trees that nothing, I don't have much luck.
For us, it was really the tornado that changed everything.
We lost a few trees over there.
We lost more than a few trees. Like we had 4 around our house. Actually 5 if you count one in my neighbor's yard. And so we went from a complete shade garden to a mix of sun and shade that has allowed us to really amp things up a lot.
I want to ask you one last question. I know you like to travel when you can, and you're a very busy person, but are you planning to go out west again this summer? And do you have any interaction with people of a more progressive persuasion out there in that state? And do you talk to them? And is there any hope that, let's just be honest, it's Wyoming, if any of that will turn in a more favorable direction as people observe the horrors of what our government is doing to people all over the world?
So yes, I am trying to carve out a little bit of time to get out to my happy place. I kind of joke that every year what I really need to do when I get off the house floor is just go directly out there and sit down and cry by the river and get it all out. I do look forward to getting out there and trying to get back out with the kids again. I do have a lot of good friends out there that are of a more progressive lean. My very good friend, Sarah Burlingame, who heads Equality Wyoming, who I bet would be happy to come on at some point, is one of the most, she doesn't ever, her light never fades. She's just always ready for the next thing. And there is a pendulum swing there. She's been elected to their state house in the past, and so there can be gains made. Even in the heart of the deep red West, there's a lot of folks who really just wish we could live and let live.
Okay, you got any other little words of wisdom or plans, or that's it for today?
Every Thursday night and Friday morning, the visibility crews of the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward, Network 49, and other neighbors are out on Thursday nights. It's Pratt and Ridge from 4 to 6, and Friday mornings it's 7:30 a.m. until about 8:30 or 9 at Greenview and Sheridan, or Greenleaf and Sheridan. I'm sorry.
I was there last week. I should send some photographs to Hal to put up with it.
Yeah,
Kelly
it's
Cassidy,
really fun.
It's always a pleasure. Say hello to all your family, your dogs, your cats, whatever you got going on over there with the snap peas. And I'll see you soon.
Whole lot of mammals over here, man.
I'll see you in the neighborhood.
Sounds good. Take care.